Hello everybody and welcome not to my library this time but to my study. And you might have noticed that there is a big gap in the shelves up there, and this is because I would like to talk about research books today, in particular research books on British country houses, and that's why I keep my research books on English country houses. Now, as somebody who writes Regency sad historical romances, I of course have done quite a lot of research on British country houses because a lot of our stories are set in a country house. So yeah, and quite luckily and quite happily I started, even before I started to write romances, I started to collect research books on various different topics, and I've been doing that for a good 20 years now, if not longer. And one of the books, or two of the books, I picked up way before I started to write romance. There's this one, and it's really heavy. Here it is: Schlösser und Adelssitze in England and Wales. And there's also, oh God, an English title. Let me see. Great Houses of England and Wales. And it's really nice because it's basically a short introduction to some of the most important country houses of both England and Wales, with lots of pretty pictures, pretty photographs. And I find this really helpful because it helps me to visualize my own country estates and to put together country estates. Yeah, and I always find pictures, oh God, it's so heavy. I always find pictures very helpful to do that. And as you can see, there are markers in there. So let me see what that is. Oh, that's Blickling, I think. Yeah, it's Blickling Hall. And God. Here we go. Blickling Hall. And as you can see, there's this lake. See that? Yeah. It's this nice country house in red brick with this diamond shaped pattern situated at a lake. And I used Blickling for the country estate in Bewitched, and there is, at the brings back so many nice memories. There's a monster in the lake. The lake plays a really important role in the book. As I said, there's a monster in the lake. Yeah, so it's really good. And leafing through these books again brings up a lot of memories from the time when I was researching that novel. The other thing is Schlösser und Adelssitze in Scotland. I guess that's great houses in Scotland. Let me check. Great Houses of Scotland, exactly, by Hugh Montgomery Massingberd. And it's basically the same thing. Introduction of some of the big aristocratic country houses in Scotland, again with short introductions about the history of each house, about the interior of each house, and you get these really pretty and big photographs. And as an added benefit, you can kill somebody with this book because it's so heavy. This is from the same series of books, basically. It's also by Hugh Montgomery Massingberd, and it's English manor houses. So that's one size down. The more modest, smaller sized, well, though modest, smaller sized is relative. I mean, this is a huge house, this one here. Yeah, so also helps me visualize country estates in my novels. I find that quite useful. Same thing goes for the Regency country house. This is specifically about houses that were built in the Regency period, though of course in most cases you would have a country house that was built and rebuilt over generations. I think that these type of houses are actually the more interesting, and also the more interesting to explore in a novel, because you can add so many different elements. It's quite nice. And I've got a marker in there as well. No! That's Annesley Cottage in Devon, and I was thinking about using that. There we go. I was thinking about using that for the second novel in the A Love for Every Season series. So this is basically the country house that Charlie and Criff get at the end of Springtime Pleasures. Then I have England's Lost Houses. Here we have from the Archives of Country Life. So this is basically about old country houses that were pulled down or that were destroyed during the war for whatever reason, or they were pulled down for whatever reason. It's kind of sad to think that so many houses were lost and were destroyed. Really sad. I also got a couple of books about specific houses or houses in specific areas, because as you might know, quite often the manor houses as well as the big country houses are built of local stone. So and I've bought the country houses of Dorset, the manor houses of Dorset, this one, and I had a specific reason for that at some time. I always have very good reasons to buy research books, just so you know. And now come a couple of specific houses. Plickling Hall, I bought this when I was writing Bewitched, because this is the visitor's guide to Plickling Hall, and I wanted some more about its history, and there's also kind of a map of the building. I wanted that because I used Plickling as the blueprint for that country house in that novel. Baddesley Clinton is a country house, a small manor house outside Birmingham, near Solihull, and that brings back really nice childhood memories, because I had a pen friend during my teens who lived near Solihull, and when I visited her, we would often go to Baddesley Clinton, and the other house was Packwood House. And in Baddesley and in Packwood House, I learned the difference between a 4-poster-and-a-half tester bed. Really nice. Yeah, that brings back childhood memories. And I'm thinking about using that in a novel, in an upcoming novel. Harewood House is near Leeds. I visited that when I went to a conference there. It's really beautiful. I wasn't able to visit the interior of the house, but I was able to visit the gardens, and they are just amazing. And you can find some pictures of Harewood, of the grounds, on my website if you're interested in that. And it really drives home how big these country estates are. Alnwick Castle. Oops. I visited Alnwick, and this is famous because they filmed bits of Harry Potter there. I visited Alnwick Alnwick Castle while I was when I was at a conference in Newcastle in 2007, I think. And I was kind of adventurous. Visited Alnwick and then drove to Berwick upon Tweed because of the Elizabethan fortress walls. But that is about the only interesting thing about Berwick upon Tweed. It's really sad because it's this small town which used to be very, very important back in the day during Elizabethan times, and it's now slowly dying. Well, it was when I went there in 2007. So yeah, it's kind of sad to see that. Oops. I also have this visitor's guide of Dunham Massey. This is a house near Manchester, and I visited that when I was in Manchester last summer. Was that last summer? Yeah, that was last year in summer at a conference. And after 3 days I had enough of the city and I had to escape, so I thought, okay, we're going to visit a country house. What I found when I visited there was I walked back from the house to the village, and that way I really got an impression of the distances between between the big estate and the village that belonged to it. And I also got a really good impression of the vastness of that estate. That was an interesting experience. Another great country house is Strawberry Hill. This is not Horace. Yes, Horace. Horace Walpole's Gothic castle. He remodeled it in the Gothic style, and by opening up Strawberry Hill to the public, Walpole made the Gothic style really, really popular in domestic design, and a lot of people started picking this up. Before that, the Gothic had been quite popular in garden architecture. We find a lot of follies, or a few follies at least, from the early part of the 18th century. Those follies that were put in landscape gardens as focal points, and some of them were Gothic, like the Gothic temple at Stowe. And it was Walpole who really, with Strawberry Hill, who made this Gothic style popular for interior design. And from then on it kind of spread, and in the 19th century finally the people were mad about all things to do with the Middle Ages. So yeah, Strawberry Hill. And of course, when it comes to big English country houses, we should not forget one of the biggest, if not the biggest of them all, and this is Chatsworth. And here is a book about Chatsworth written by the Duchess of Devonshire, Deborah Devonshire, who died 2 weeks ago, last week. She was the last of the Mitford sisters, and she married the man who would eventually become Duke of Devonshire, and they moved into Chatsworth. And in that book she describes, and they opened up the house in order to pay the bills, basically, because they had to pay a lot of inheritance tax and things like that, and that was a huge boon, so they opened up the house. The way she describes, I really like her voice. The way she describes living in that house is very down to earth. She has a very practical approach to it. For example, and For example, she writes, the joys and the difficulties of living in such a huge house are all magnified. Can I have a list of the chimney stacks and the rooms to which they belong? This undated wail from Granny Evie, wife of the 9th Duke, to the Clerk of Works typifies the unusual problems. Everything is bigger than life size. The indoor distances, the far-away meals, the long passages and stairs for luggage all add to the complications. A bag put down in a rare bit of house can be lost for months. The master key can be forgotten in an attic till panic sets in. It is a terrible place to house train a puppy. Letting a dog out in the night is quite a performance, with 34 stairs to go down and up again, and the complicated unlocking of monster doors. On this inescapable errand of a dog owner, I sometimes meet the night watchman with his steady tread in the silent dark, and the beam of his torch a single lurid light, like the dong with a luminous nose. We reassure each other. I'm just putting the dog out. Oh, I wondered who it is. Can't speak English anymore. Oh, I wondered who it was. And we go our different ways. On the good side, children can roller skate for miles without going out of doors. On a wet day, you can walk for hours, be entertained and keep dry. Gramophone, piano and loud singers can blast away in the drawing room without fear of waking angry sleepers. And there is always escape from people, even though 500,000 come here every year. In its long history, the house has never been more live than it is today. I think that is a really beautiful sentiment, and this really typifies Deborah's outlook on life and her approach to life. And she gives you a very good insight about living in such a big house. And you can also find a few snippets in her other books, namely in Home to Roost, and in All in One Basket, which is basically an omnibus edition of Home to Roost and Counting My Chickens. And it's really interesting to see how she writes about living in these big houses and about the difficulties, the cold and the draft, and oh my God, it's so cold in winter. No wonder all our Regency misses carry around shawls when they go to the country. They will need them in a country house. So that I can highly recommend Deborah Devonshire's books, not just for entertainment value, but also for insights into living in a big house and life in the aristocracy, things like that. Then I also have, again for visualization purposes, English Country House Interiors by Jeremy Musson, or Musson. I never know how to pronounce these strange names. And it looks pretty, doesn't it? I haven't really used it all that much yet, but I thought it might come in useful on one day. Because it gives you all these fantastic staircases, rooms and whatnot. And so you can pick and choose what to use for your own country house. The next two books are by one of my favorite scholars. This is Marc Giorat. He's fantastic. He's just fantastic. Country House Companion. Let me just briefly look. This is basically a collection of snippets from primary sources where people talk about visiting a country house, living in a country house. It's quite insightful. The other book is Life in the English Country House, also by Marc Giorat, and this is basically a history of the English country house, the way it's developed and the different purposes it was used for. Again, very insightful when you want to learn about where specific rooms were in the house, and how the crown plan of country houses changed in the course of time, because they were used for different things, for different purposes, and also because different aesthetics kicked in. So highly recommended. For the nitty-gritty stuff, you know, how country houses work exactly, I highly recommend Pamela Sandbrook's A Country House at Work, 3 Centuries of Dunham Messy. Even though this is with a specific country house in mind, it's really, really good, and it gives you a really good insight on how, you know, how the servants worked, how this relationship between upstairs downstairs worked, how the relationship between the outside and the inside of the house, how that worked, how the whole house was run. Similarly, Christina Hardiman, Behind the Scenes Domestic Arrangements in Historic Houses, is highly recommendable. It is just wonderful. It gives you such a wealth of information about the nitty-gritty details, about things like bell pulls, and you know, where to find the loos, things like that. It's just, yeah, it's wonderful. And I bought it 10 years ago, just realised. Yeah, it's highly recommended, and very good book. So that was my video about research books on English country houses, British country houses, not just English country houses, British country houses. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope I'll see you soon. Bye bye.